I'd like to call the Maumelle City Council meeting to order. First order of business is the invocation. Well, first I need to let you know that Councilmember Rick Anderson is still sick and will not be with us tonight. And also Councilmember Holt let me know this afternoon that he was not feeling well either, and so he's not going to be here tonight. So we're down 2 council members tonight. I will let you know that Councilmember Anderson is out of the hospital, but he's still recovering at home. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Councilmember John Vapurzian to lead us in the invocation and Pledge of Allegiance.
Father, we love you. Thank you for the opportunity to gather here this evening. Our thoughts are with our fellow council members who are not well. Thank you that Rick is home with Kim and the kids. I pray that you'd bless and strengthen them. We do think of our firefighter, Dustin Weaver, and his son, Ronald, as he recovers from the severe burns that he suffered. Officer Cruz, as he does the same recovery from the accident that he was in. Lord, that you would protect our local uniformed personnel that protect us here in our city, our military that protect us here and abroad. This Thanksgiving season, we just take a moment and give you thanks for all that you've given to us, for our lives, for the air that is in our lungs, for what you've given to us in your Son, Jesus, and this city, the friendship that we have, the friendships that we have here, our families and the leadership. God, I pray that you'd give us wisdom this evening here, and that you would be pleased with all that we say and all that we do. May truth abound. For your name's sake, we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councilmember Vapurzian, for that invocation and pledge. I have no special guests and announcements tonight. Next item is the approval of the minutes of the November 6th regular meeting. You have a copy of those minutes in your packet. Is there any additions or corrections to those minutes?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of November the 6th. Is there any discussion on that motion? Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, I do have a little correction to the minutes here. Under council members' comments on, I don't know which page it is, but this Councilmember Mosley stated that he asked a legislator if he could come out and speak to the council. That's not what I was saying there. I stated that he had asked someone from legislative audit to speak to the oversight committee. And I'd like to make a motion to correct that.
And then, can you repeat that, please?
Okay.
Member of legislative audit, you said?
Yes, someone from legislative audit to speak to the oversight committee. And but stated that that is not something they do. So, in other words, not a legislator. I was saying someone from legislative audit to come and speak to the oversight committee instead of the council.
Okay.
I remember that. I'll second it. I remember that.
Okay.
And I don't know where to put it in the same motion, but it looks like there's some information down below that may have been accidentally from the last council meeting. It said he had read an article about a city who experienced embezzlement. Vapurzian stated the City and Town magazine was a good article. I think all that was in the previous meeting. From that point on down. So I guess I would, I'll move to strike that. Does that sound right to you, Alderman Vapurzian?
It was from a month ago.
Second.
Okay. All right, so we have some amended minutes. Okay, so is everybody in favor of approving the minutes as amended tonight?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Motion passes. Next item is public comment, and I have several cards on public comment, but most of those are pertaining to ordinance 944, 945, and 946. But I do have one that's not on that agenda item. So at this time, we'd like to hear from Ms. Jan Bullington. If you would, state your name and address for the record, please.
Okay. long time. Jan Bullington, and number 4 Blue Mountain Cove in Maumelle. We had a fire at about 2 a.m. this morning. It wasn't just a little fire. It was a big fire. And I'm glad the fire happened not 2 days ago when we had the winds, or it would have been very, very bad. I'm going to read from notes because I'm a little nervous and a lot upset. In our park, there has been and is notorious areas where kids have been hanging out. One of it which is on the North Trail, where my home is located. Last night at about 2 a.m., there was a fire. The area that burned is where kids have a camp of sorts. This could have been a real tragedy if there would have been high winds like a few days ago. I feel we as citizens need to be very much aware of the park and what is going on in it. If something doesn't look right or looks suspicious, let the police know about it. Examples: a person loitering around an empty parked cars in the parking areas. This has been happening as you come into the park. There has been break-ins. I am suggesting possibly to alleviate this is possibly to have a video camera. There is a rain shelter where the kids couldn't get up and get something like that. It is starting to happen more and more in that front area. I was talking with someone today, and the city Parks and Rec, and I noticed he is here tonight, has rails. And the rails, as I understand, are used when we start having bad weather, especially snow. They were used once last year. And there is a set of rails that can be they're already there, but they would be implemented in that they would slide in. And I am proposing, I would love to see it nightly, the park to be gated. But that being said, at least Friday and Saturday nights. I lived in those apartments for a year while our home was being built. And there was a lot of stuff that went on. A lot of drugs. And there's ladies present, so there was a lot of other stuff. Okay? But it was never published or anything like that. And people have argued and said, well, if we put a gate there, or like the rails, they're going to walk in. Believe me, what they're doing in those cars, they're not going to be walking in. Okay. I am suggesting with this drought, and I mean it is severe, for us that live on the North Trail, the leaves, the underbrush, everything, it's tinder dry. It really is. That fire really took off. I am suggesting no smoking in the park. Or if we can't enforce that, then have designated areas. These kids were back there, and a neighbor that she since moved, but she had seen a lot of activity back there a long time ago. And I think what could have happened, of course, I'm not a fire marshal, but I think what could have happened is maybe they left something smoldering. And there again, I thank God that we didn't have the high winds, because there, for sure there would have been homes lost. In closing, I think most of the kids that do the mischief are the same group responsible for most of the problems. If caught, maybe a work detail, like cleaning up the park, would help. That's all I have to say. But it was scary. I hope it never happens again. That fire went fast. And there is a neighbor that did get pictures when it first started and the flames were way up. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Mrs. Bullington.
Welcome.
Next item is the financial statement review, and that is done at the second meeting of each month, which is tonight. You have a copy of the financials in your agendas or your packets, and Ms. Vega is here to present the financials and go through a PowerPoint.
Okay. Okay, this is a graph of the fund balances, and it's comparing to the budget. The green is the current fund balance, and the blue is the budgeted fund balance. The sanitation fund is down 6% to budget. The street fund is down 4% to budget, and the general fund is down 7% to budget. But our requirement for funds is $2.5 million in excess, and we have that. Next slide. This is the general fund major revenue sources. The county millage tax is up 6% over prior year. The county sales tax is up 2% over prior year. There we go. The city sales tax is down 6%, and that has to do with audits that happened in the prior year and extra collections. Franchise fees are flat. Buildings and permit fees are up 35%. Parks and Rec are up 1%. And the Senior Wellness Center is up 388%, or $75,000. For the street fund, our turnback revenue is up 11% over prior year. The street aid program is up 18% over prior year. And the county millage tax is up 4% over prior year. Sanitation fees, they are down 2% over prior year. This is the general fund expense comparison. Administration is the first grouping. The budget is blue, the green is current, and the red is prior year. And we are down 8% over prior year. If you go to the police and fire section, they are down 3% in their spending over prior year. And the fire department is 18% over prior year spending, and that's due to the purchase of a fire truck of $538,000. Animal control's down 6%. Public Works is up 4%. Parks is up 5%. And City Services is down 8%. The next slide shows a pie chart of each of the different departments in the general fund. And as you can see, police and fire is where we spend the bulk of our money. The next slide shows total spending compared to budget. And at this time of the year, we should be at 83%. And as you can see, all funds are under 83% except for city services. And it's up 130,000, but it is still, or it's with, it has 130,000 left in its budget. It's not over budget. The street fund expenditures, personnel is down 3%, and operating is up, and it's due to the design services for the third entrance. And year to date, we've spent $562,000. Sanitation, they're up 7% over prior year, and their operating expenses are down. That in 2016, there was a $238,000 garbage truck that was purchased, an automated garbage truck, and that's the variance there. Do you have any questions?
Councilmember
We have
Vipers.
the same things implemented for collection of sanitation fees that we've always had. Are we doing anything different than that? Because if revenues are down 2%, are we?
I didn't hear the start of your question, I'm
Are we
sorry.
doing what we've always done as far as
Yes, sir.
collection? Okay,
Yes, sir.
okay.
That list goes to the county December 1st.
Okay.
There's a resolution on today's
Yes,
agenda to
yes.
move those, forward,
Other than putting their names in the paper.
We haven't done that, so.
Right.
Do I hear a motion to approve financials?
So moved.
Second?
Do I hear a second? All right, sorry. Have a motion and a second to approve financials. Is there a discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Motion passes. Next item is, thank you, Ms. Vega. Next item is a procedural motion. I need a motion from the floor to read all resolutions and ordinances by title only tonight.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to read all resolutions and ordinances by title only tonight. Is there any discussion on that motion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Motion passes. Next item is unfinished business. We have the second reading of ordinance number 944, providing for the levy of a sales tax. Madam City Clerk, if you'd read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 944, an ordinance providing for the levy of a 0.5% sales and use tax within the City of Maumelle, Arkansas, and prescribing other matters pertaining thereto.
Okay, thank you very much. The most of the comments I have are all on 944, 945, and 946. So we'll take those as we get to them, and we'll hear them after 944 if that's okay. But in your council packet, you have a sales and use tax information booklet that has been prepared by the Stevens Incorporated, and Ms. Leanne Burnett is here with us tonight to go through that and explain that to you. And I think she gave everybody a paper copy at your desk also. Ms.
Thank
Burnett?
you, Mayor. After last meeting, we thought it would be helpful to put together some information based on comments that were received at the last meeting. So if you'll open your booklet and go ahead and just turn to the first page, this is a recap of the Series 2015 bonds. There were some questions about those bonds. Those bonds refunded the Series 2013 and 2014 bond issues and provided project funds for the City Hall project, the Senior Wellness Facility, and athletic fields, totaling $8.3 million. The bonds were secured by 6.6 mills of assessed value of taxable property in the city, with an estimated revenue of $2.3 million. And the bonds were authorized by the citizens of Maumelle at an election held November 4th of 2014. And the outstanding balance as of November 8th, or even as of now, is $15,040,000. So the original issue amount was $18,845,000. They were issued in February of 2015, and the balance is now $15,040,000. The maximum annual debt service on the bonds is just over $1.5 million. The bonds have a final stated maturity of March 1, 2030, but 100% of that 6.6 mils goes towards the bond issue, repaying the bonds. So because of that, the projected final redemption is March 1, 2025. And then the optional redemption date, and what that means is that whenever you issue bonds, you tell a bondholder you're going to get to hold these bonds at least until this date, unless they're paid off from surplus tax collections, until March 1, 2022. So that's some general information about the 2015 bonds. Are there any questions about that, about those bonds?
Councilmember Mosley?
Okay, this optional redemption date, my question for Mr. Spivey last
Yes.
time, does that come into play here as far as whether we could use this property tax mills as a refinancing mechanism instead of doing a sales tax?
It does come into play in a couple of ways. You'll remember back when we did the 13 and 14 bonds, we knew that there might be other projects coming. And so those bonds were structured with very short optional redemptions in them to allow for some flexibility. And so when the city did the 15 bonds, it refunded the 13s and 14s because the optional redemption date permitted it. But to get a better interest rate, you have to, and I'm talking credit and I shouldn't, but generally speaking in the market expects to see that these bonds are going to be available to the investor for a certain period of time for them to price them and bid on them. And so the optional redemption date for these bonds was 2022, which was 7 years from the date the 15s were issued. Now, this rolls into a bigger discussion, and I think the discussion that we had last time was how much of these bonds have been paid down, and is there a way to restructure this and reuse the 6.6 mils? And I don't want to presume that that's what your question, but I think that's what we were talking about. I think what the summary that Ms. Burnett has prepared shows you is only about, and I think my suggestion to you initially was that there probably hadn't been enough paid down to get much mileage out of this, and that's true. There's only been approximately $3.5 million paid down. The total amount of bonds issued was $18,845, and recently it was $15,040,000. So that's the deal. But because you have a optional redemption date which is out at 2022, the only way to refund these bonds is to do what's called an advance refunding. An advance refunding as opposed to a current refunding. Current refunding, you issue new bonds as we did in 15 for the 13s and 14s, and you pay the old bonds off immediately. In an advance refunding, because we have a longer period of time before we can pay these bonds off, from now until 2022, you borrow enough money to be able to buy securities which are issued by the government and matched to the maturities on the outstanding bonds. And financially, it sometimes costs you more to do that. So there's a dissaving sometimes with an advance refunding. But in this case, that's the only way you could do it. The problem that's arisen, and both Leanne's office and my office have been looking at these, and I think if you turn to page 2, the next page in the summary, it hits upon this. The President's tax bill has recently been announced, and one of the elements of the President's tax bill, and this kind of caught, we sort of had an inkling that something was coming, but they're going to do away with advance refundings.
This is a federal tax.
The federal tax bill.
Both the House and Senate version
Yeah.
both eliminate advance refunding.
And so that bill only came out about 3 weeks ago. And it put a date in there that if you didn't have your advance refunding done by December 31st, you couldn't do it. They just eliminate that as an option under the tax code. So basically, to do that, we would have to have enough time to go out, call an election, vote to refund them, and go forward as we did in 15. And there's just, they've just eliminated the option. Now, it's possible that that bill won't pass, but right now, all the information that we're hearing from the people in D.C. who are a lot closer to it than I am or than Leah says that this is going to happen. And the fact that it's in both the Senate proposal and the House proposal is a pretty sure thing that this is going to happen. Now, I can't tell you why. There's somebody deep in the depths of the Congressional Research Service who's determined that advance refundings are not a good thing, and they're going to do away with it. There are probably some more technical reasons that my investment banking partner here could share with you, but the reality is that if you can't get your advance refunding done by December 31, based upon, and this is just a proposal, but this is how they do tax legislation. They drop a bill in the hopper that has a date in it, and if you don't get it done by that date, you lose. And so is it law? Will it be law on December 31st? Well, this year it could be, but it might not be. But you go out there and you do an advance refunding because you know this bill's there. You're taking your life into your hands because they will retroactively reverse your advance refunding and determine it's illegal. So we sort of have a conundrum here, which we didn't anticipate. But that is the long, rather around-the-bend answer to your question, I think. If it could be restructured with an advance refunding, there is a little bit of freeboard there, probably not enough for the restructure and do the bonds here without increasing the millage. But even so, there's just not technically a way to do it, practically a way to do it. That's what we're confronted with. Now, did I say that? All right. Okay.
You did a pretty good job.
All right. Sorry to throw cold water, but that's the truth.
We can't do the current refunding, and the advance refunding is in dire jeopardy.
It's in jeopardy. That's right. That's right. We're not real thrilled about it because, if the city comes to Leanne's company or our firm and says we'd like to do this, and we say, sure, we'll do an advance refunding. Well, we're not going to be able to do that in the future. We did an advance refunding for the library a year or so ago, and we've got advance refundings we've done for other people, but they're going to eliminate that as an option.
So at this point, it looks like not a viable.
I would say that's yes, sir.
Okay, that's all I needed to hear.
All right.
Wanted to explore that option, make sure it wasn't there.
And we wanted to get the right information for you, so
Thank you very much.
you bet.
Any other questions about the Series 2015 bonds? All right, then we'll move over to sales and use tax. We wanted to provide this based on some questions as well that came up last time on page 3. This just gives you some information of the historical tax collections for Maumelle, the 1% that you currently have in place. And you can see in 2012, your tax collections were just over $2 million, and they have grown to calendar year 2016, $2,495,000. You can see the annual growth there as listed. And then what we did is we looked at a rolling 12-month based on your current year 2017 collections. And you can see for the most recent 12 months, November of 16 through October of 2017, it was $2,360,000. So a half-cent expected revenue. For purposes of our number analysis, we used $1,181,000. And then I also wanted to update, there were several elections last week for sales and use tax. Or was that the week before?
That was last week.
My weeks are running together. And you can see the city of Alexander will be increasing their sales and use tax to 3%. Conway is increasing to 2 1/8%. And Lone Oak increasing to 3%. And you can see, as noted, some of those are permanent and some of those are temporary taxes. And some, the city of Lone Oak will be bonding a portion of those for water projects. And then you can see your surrounding cities as well. Any questions on page 3? Okay, so page 4, and this we talked a little bit about, but I just kind of wanted to put it in writing so that I know you received this information a couple of days ago. So basically, these ordinances provide a ½ cent for debt service on bonds, which for my purposes, I'm going to call that the bond tax. And then a ½ cent is in the ordinance for operating and maintaining the city's public safety facilities and activities, which I'm going to call the public safety tax. So, with regards to the bond tax, a definitive ending date is not included in the ordinance or on the ballot, but the bond tax will end when the bonds are paid in full. And typically how that happens is you have a bond trustee, and the trustee is within a financial institution. They represent the bondholder, make sure that the monies go to the bondholder when they're supposed to. The bondholder will notify the city that the bonds are going to be paid in full, and then the city notifies the State Department of Finance and Administration that the tax should be terminated. So that's the typical process. A maximum amount of bonds to be issued is included in the ordinance, and we've talked, or you all have talked about $14 million for one project and $2 million for another. The ordinance lists a higher amount, and the reason for that is twofold. First, we estimated a fully funded debt service reserve, and what that means is we estimate what your highest annual payment will be. Again, it is just an estimate. We do not know market conditions at the time of your sale because you haven't had your sale yet. We estimate what a maximum annual debt service would be, so we allow funds to fund that, and then a conservative estimate of cost of issuance. And then that would be the difference. And then we calculate all that at what we believe to be a conservative interest rate, again, because we don't know what that interest rate is yet. Any questions on that? Okay, so then on page 5, and we talked about this as well, but if all ballot items are approved by the voters, the bond structure would reflect a scheduled annual debt service amount and then the estimated tax revenue from a half a cent, staying within the parameters of the maximum bond issue size. Any growth in the bond tax would be used to pay off the bonds early. Okay? The public safety tax would provide coverage for the bonds. Again, if you were buying these bonds and we structured the bond tax, those as dollar for dollar, you want to have extra coverage in case for some reason the tax drops. So the public safety tax provides coverage. Amounts not needed from the public safety tax for debt service would be released to the city for the specified purpose as approved by the voters. So the bonds would be issued to generate $16 million in project funds based on the current market, which is preliminary and subject to change. As you know, the final maturity of the bonds, we estimate, assuming 0% growth in the tax, would be 2039. And if we cash funded a debt service reserve, then you would have funds sitting there for that last year's payment, so the tax should roll off the books in 2038 at 0% growth. Again, that is just our estimate. Are there any questions about that?
Councilmember Mosley?
Yes, the statement says the public safety tax will provide coverage for the bonds. What does that mean?
Okay, so we have the bond tax, and you buy these bonds, and we're going to structure those dollar for dollar. So we're going to estimate what we think the bond tax is going to bring in, and then the annual debt service is going to match that. Well, if you're buying my bonds, what happens if that sales tax drops? There's not going to be enough to pay you. So the public safety tax provides coverage. In the event that should happen, it can cover the debt service. It provides security to the bondholder.
So it's kind of like collateral?
Before, I tend to try to answer legal questions. Let me have bond counsel come up here.
It's kind of like insurance, isn't it?
In a way, I prefer to use the word it's available. Your purpose is to use it for something else, but were there to be an unanticipated, and I'm sorry, I keep looking over here and I apologize to this half of the council, so let me right myself here. It's available in the event there's an unanticipated shortfall, shall we say. Now, what the underwriters have done is to structure this in such a way that they can, hopefully the half-cent tax is at the right level to fund, as Leanne said, dollar for dollar, the debt service. Obviously, that could change. If you got a little bit better interest rate, you'd have a few more dollars in the bond tax to pay debt service. What you don't want is to have is a situation, and this goes back to 2008, where we saw a lot of things most of us hadn't seen in our lifetimes. There may be some folks here who'd seen some other things like that, but I hadn't seen it in my lifetime. And so this additional half-cent tax is available to provide funds, if needed, to make certain that the city does not miss a payment on the bonds. But obviously, you primarily want to use it for public safety. But it is also, if the voters approve it, approved to enhance the bonds and be available.
Now, is this something we would need to, like, escrow this money?
That's a real good question. Let me tell, and I guess, and again, I apologize. Let me think about this. I think the first sales tax bond that I've worked on was in 1985, and over the past 30 years, we've seen some evolution. I think probably the insecurity in the credit markets in 2008 did more to change how credit is viewed for municipal governments in anything recently. And so what your underwriters do is work with the credit rating agencies, and they also have their finger on the pulse of the investing public, to find out what it takes to hopefully get the best rate. Now, I think, I believe the last debt that you issued was rated, which was, I mean, really wonderful, unusual, but getting rated debt for a city the size of Maumelle is just simply something that didn't happen in the past. One of the reasons for that is the credit rating agencies have tightened things up. And so what we have seen most recently and most often is where we have an additional tax that provides additional debt service coverage. Those taxes go to the bond trustee, and almost immediately, the bond trustee determines they have enough money, they immediately release the rest of those proceeds back to the city. And then they're available to the city to use for those purposes. Has that been your experience?
Yes, and if I can say it a different way, sales and use taxes are paid out monthly. So the trustee receives those monthly tax receipts and calculates using, interest on bonds is paid twice a year and principal is paid once a year. So the trustee will calculate 1/6 interest and 1/12 principal, and that's the amount he or she says they need for that month. Anything in excess of that, with regard to the bond tax, would go to pay down the bonds. The public safety tax, if not touched, would be released to the city. And I was told by 2 different trustees that happens, if not the same day they receive it, the very next day.
So those funds then flow through the what you call them, the trustee?
Yes.
And they flow through, and we don't get the funds for that tax until they've said okay.
Yes,
So-
which is usually the same day or the day after they receive it.
Right. So we'd need to be careful about that to maybe make sure we don't get into an overspending situation with that money in case that should be called on at some point down the road. Or
Well, that's a real good point. I think these disbursements occur pretty much, I won't say instantaneously, but right away. And so, as Leanne said, what the trustee is looking for on a monthly basis is 1/12 of the annual interest and, 1/6 of the semi-annual interest and 1/12 of the annual principal. Now, if she looks at the bond tax and she has more than enough, she makes those deposits, and then any surplus goes into a redemption account to be held until the next date when they can redeem bonds early and pay this down. And of course, this is like prepaying your home mortgage. It has a compounding effect. As you prepay it, less of your collections goes to pay interest because you have less debt outstanding. And so you have the surplus, which then compounds to pay the debt down that much quicker.
less of a chance that they would latch onto that money as time goes.
Right. And they have no interest in holding on to the extra money. Their purpose is to simply make certain that the bondholders have been paid, and then that money goes back to the city. And obviously, we've kind of rolled ahead to the bond issuance process, which is a bit of a presumption, but we'd work all that out at that time to make sure that that flow of funds is something that the city understands. We wouldn't do that without everybody's understanding of how that's going to work. But in general, that's how it would work.
This is why we see this kind of language pop up into the first two ordinances, because it does talk about the repayment of bonds in those two ordinances. So that's to.
It's an additional purpose. And then, of course, when the bonds are paid off, that purpose is no more.
2008s do happen occasionally, though, so.
They do. They do. They do.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Vapurzian?
Two questions. What's, looking at page 3 here with the local surrounding communities, the percentage sales and use tax, what's ours?
Currently, it's 1%.
1%? Okay. All right. And then the question that I have is the question that everybody wants to know, that you can't really give us an answer because you don't know the percentage. So what's the payment?
I don't know.
I know you don't. I know you don't.
That was a trick question.
It was, but I mean, that's when you buy a car or a house, you want to know, what's the payment? So I'm looking at, so we get 1.18 on a half-cent revenue, what's our payment going to be? You can't say that because you don't know the percentage.
Let me tell you, let's let Ms. Burnett explain to you how the underwriters price these bonds in the process. They're not going to go out there and sell these bonds at a rate you can't afford. It just doesn't happen that way. But let her explain how she
Thank
does
you.
that.
Okay, so when a city is looking at adopting a tax to do these types of projects, what we start with is their sales tax history to see how much would be generated. In the case of Maumelle, what we did is we determined that 1,181,000 was a good number, okay? If we run that at 4.5%, it gets you the amount of project funds you need
Okay,
for both projects.
okay,
So that's 1-to-1
okay.
at 4.5%.
Right, which is high.
Exactly. We feel it's a conservative rate today,
That's what I
but
wanted.
the market is preliminary and subject to change.
Thank you.
Okay.
And the bond issuance actually would come back to the council for their approval on the day of the sale, correct?
That
Ms.
is
Burnett?
correct. That is correct. And all fees and expenses are reviewed prior to that date, so you are aware of what you're paying for.
Okay.
2015 bonds, what were they issued at percentage-wise? Any idea? Oh, that's fine.
I can get you that number.
That's all right. That's all right. Thank you.
A little over 3%, wasn't it, I think?
Sounds
But,
right.
Yeah, yeah.
Any other questions? All right, page 6, I'm not going to go through this line by line, but page 6 kind of gives you, I think the important thing I want you to walk away with from this page is that there are certain time frames that have to be met when you're going through this process. There's a 60-day requirement and there's a 90-day requirement. And so you'll see in the chart at the bottom of the page, a proclamation has to be filed no later than 90 days before the collection of the tax. So you'll see that this is a very long process. This isn't something that can happen quickly. And if you want to turn to page 7, we went ahead and dropped in some dates just to use your examples of what you're currently going through. So if you proceed down this road, you can see November 20th is listed there as reading the ordinance the second time. If an election is held in March of 2018, the tax levy would begin July 1 of 18, and then in August, the bond issue would close and project funds would be available to the city. The proceeds of the bonds would be available. And then in September of 2018, the actual tax collections would begin by the city. The tax collections occur 2 months after the tax is levied. Any questions about that?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Kelly?
So if we rolled the election until May to coincide with the election, then we would push this whole time frame by 3 months.
That is correct.
Okay,
Would,
thank you.
would that make I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
would that make a difference in the interest rate if we
Very
waited?
much, for sure.
Or do you not know, or would you?
I
in
don't
your crystal
know.
ball?
Right.
But the reality is rates are going up, right?
There is a general belief that that is true.
Sounds like an attorney.
There's a trend.
Yes, there is.
Any other questions? Okay, and then on page 8, actually, Councilmember Kelly, I think you asked this question last time about how the market compared to when we issued the bonds in 2015. And I apologize, this chart is a little difficult to read. I should have created a specific one for your question, but the way you look at this chart is it's a November basis. So that 2007 on your left is actually November 2007. And so it takes annual snapshots. November of each year is the hash mark. So if you look, we priced your 2015 bonds January 20th of 2015. So that 2015 mark on the chart is actually November of 2015. So you would move to the left of that to find January. So really it's easier, I guess, if you start November of 2014 and then you'd have December, January, right in that little time frame. And when I took some specific deals and looked at them, and I think they're comparable, but this kind of just gives you kind of an overall view. And I'm happy to do more research if you'd like something more specific. But you can see, compared to that 2008 time frame, the market still is favorable with regard to tax-exempt bonds. And that's all I have, but I'm happy to answer any questions. And, of course, Bill Spivey is here as well.
Are there any other questions for Ms. Burnett or Mr. Spivey? Okay, thank you very much. This time, we'll go ahead and hear comments from the public regarding the ordinance 948, and we'll go ahead and hear 945 and 946 all at this time so they don't have to get up 3 times and say that. Councilmember Saunders?
Thank you, Mayor. Before we start with the public or the comments, I would like to make a comment because a lot of people may not be aware of this, and a large portion of the people here are concerned about the 2 half-cent sales taxes. I have had people contact me, and I know of at least one other alderman that has been contacted about having a public meeting or public meetings on this. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mayor, but I believe we are going to have a public meeting in January after the holidays are through. And then, if need be, we might have another one in February. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. The public meetings the town hall meetings or public meetings or whatever you would want to call them would be to inform the voters. Right now, we're trying to inform the council, and so at this time, I don't think that a public meeting is necessary to inform the council of this issue. And so therefore, yes, there might be 3 scheduled, there might be 5 scheduled. I don't know what there would be, but I would recommend that if this passed on December the 4th, you're right into Christmas and everybody has Christmas parties and everything else. I don't think it'd be a good time to schedule a town hall meeting and have much of the public show up in December. So therefore, I would schedule one early January and then try to work a couple more in there also. And also, whatever the schedule would allow, but maybe do it at several locations and maybe go to some of the just the venues we have around town too to talk to people about the issue so they're as informed as possible.
Well, I just wanted to bring it up so that the public, trying to get it out to the public that we are looking at town hall or public meetings.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councilmember Saunders. All right, and what I would ask is be respectful. We're trying to conduct a meeting here. When people do sidebar conversations in the audience, that other people can hear it, and so it's disrupting or disturbing. So please try to keep your personal comments to yourself, if you would, during the public comment. First one I have is from Mr. David Ray. And please state your name and address for the record, please.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. My name is David Ray. I live at 3 Horn Rim Place here in Maumelle. At the last meeting, I shared with you some of my concerns about special elections and how they result in needlessly low turnout, and that's backed up by empirical research that's been done here in the state of Arkansas. And Since I shared that, there have been several special elections here in central Arkansas that illustrate the point that I made last time I was here. Consider the special election held in the city of Conway to raise their tax, resulted in a 7% turnout. 3,500 people voted in a town of 60,000. To put that in perspective, the last time they held an election for mayor, over 23,000 voted. Here in Pulaski County, in the Gray Township, they had another special election on a wet-dry issue. The turnout there was 6.5%. Barely 2,000 people voted out of nearly 32,000 people that were eligible. Simply put, 6.5% turnout, 7% turnout is an embarrassment. It is completely preventable. And it's preventable by not holding a special election. It's the result of local officials strategically holding a special election at a time when they believe they can self-select their turnout to the best of their ability. Issues like whether or not to raise taxes are important, and they should be decided by more than a tiny sliver of the electorate. Attending last week's meeting, there was a couple of questions that I had, so I'll share some of those with you. And I'm not an expert on city finances, so some of you may already know the answers to these questions, but it's helped me think through the issue, and hopefully it will help some of you as well. Number one, why are we having two separate half-cent sales tax issues if the purported purpose of the first one is to fund the completion of an interchange? From my vantage point, it seems like we're asking the voters for an additional half-cent and using the first one as a convenient excuse to slip in the second one. We just saw a PowerPoint that said that the second tax was to provide coverage for the bonds. Well, if that's the case, why are we referring to it as a public safety tax? That's just simply not being honest with voters. Also, Arkansas has the third highest combined state and local sales tax in the entire country already. And how did we get that way? A half cent at a time. We should aspire to be top 5 in the country in a lot of different categories, but highest sales tax in the country is not one of those categories. And last time, at the last meeting, there was a lot of talk about how the second half-cent sales tax would go to the general fund, and that then the community service fee, or I'm not sure if that's the correct term for it, would be eliminated. If that's the case, why is that not in the ordinance? Why wouldn't we just put that into the ordinance so that it would go away, perhaps contingent upon passage of the special election? There's 1,000,001 instances of government promising to do something, not doing it, and the normal people who pay taxes are left holding the bag when that happens. And what's the total cost of the community service fee compared to what the sales tax would generate? Because if the sales tax is going to generate more money than what the community service fee generates, then that's going to amount to a tax increase regardless of whether the community service fee goes away or not. Next, why are we trying to raise the people's taxes when we don't even know what percentage of the whole project is going to fall on the city's shoulders? You know, the Bible says, for which one of you, when he wants to build a tower, does not sit down and first calculate the cost to see if he has enough to complete it? I think it's common sense to find out how much money is going to be required of the city for our share of the project before we go and ask the voters for more money. Raising taxes, I think most people would agree, would be the last option, not the first. And why don't we have the money to do this? This is not a natural disaster that's caught the city off guard. This is a project that's been talked about, to my knowledge, for well over a decade. So why haven't we prepared for it adequately? When I have to prepare for a predictable expense that's on the horizon, like buying a new car or putting a new roof on my house, I plan and I save incrementally over time. Maybe that's old-fashioned, but unlike government, I don't have the ability to just take more of someone else's money to do it. I have to plan for it. And how much of our turnback funds have we spent on things like walking paths and bike paths and trails and things like that, when we knew full well that we were going to need money for a big, expensive, important project? I don't come to these council meetings often. I only show up when there are issues of tax increases going on, That's generally because I'm starting a family, have a newborn at home, and busy living my life. But the last time I was here, prior to the last meeting, was when some in the city were trying to pass an advertising and promotion tax, which would go to fund tourism and things like that. Things that I think we can all agree are nice, but probably not core functions of government. And now, some are coming forward and saying we need to increase taxes so that we can have money for core functions of government, like roads and public safety. Coming to raise taxes for something that's not a core function of government, and then coming back and saying, oh, but we also need this for the core functions of government, signals to me that priorities are out of line. So those are my thoughts. Those are some things I've been thinking about as I've been thinking through these ordinances, and I hope that's of some use to some of you as you consider this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. Next card I have is from Miss Belinda Harris Ritter.
Good evening. I'm Belinda Harris Ritter, 103 Hibiscus Drive. And I'm requesting that you slow down the adoption of these ordinances so the special election can be held on May 22nd in conjunction with the state primary, and the city can hold a public forum with an opportunity for taxpayers to ask questions before you vote on it, before you decide to have a special election on a day that is not the primary, that will cost us a lot of money. And although special interests have said they will pay for it, I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with that. Normally, there is public meeting discussion, and if an ordinance is going to be prepared, there's direction from the council to the city attorney or the mayor if there's a need to have contracts for outside counsel or engineering reports or anything like that. That did not happen in this case. Instead, there was no public discussion. There was no direction from the council, which is the legislative body of the city. The mayor, on his own, proceeded to obtain engineering studies, engage an underwriter, and hire attorneys to write the ordinances and get the tax increases passed. I know this because of documents I received through the Freedom of Information Act. The underwriter was retained October 2nd for bonds in an anticipated principal amount of $14 million to construct an interchange and other infrastructure capital improvements. The attorneys began work based on Ordinance 494 of 2012, which the mayor provided to them on October 16th. On October 18th, the attorneys provided drafts of ordinances. On October 19th, the mayor made some changes and said, quote, also, I've provided some actual amounts, but I'm awaiting engineers' estimates for one of the projects. Do the two projects have to be voted on separately? I also listed March 13th, 2018 as the election day. I need for you to tell me if that will work if the ordinances are passed on December 4th, 2017, end quote. On October 26th, the mayor emailed the underwriter and said, quote, we are considering adding another project to make the tax more palatable to hopefully a group that may oppose the tax. Can we add $2 million to the bond issue and stay within the 1.50 debt service coverage? The bonds are at that point up from $14 million to $16 million. There are more emails, but that gives you the idea. There's an engagement letter contract between Wright, Lindsay, and Jennings and the city. It states in part, quote, our requested fee for services in this matter, assuming a principal amount of bonds of approximately $18 million, would be $65,000. In the event the voters of the city fail to approve the taxes, or the bond should not be issued for any other reason, our fees will be based on our standard billing. They're going to get paid either way for their services, and they should. My concern is how they were hired. The bonds are up again, now from $16 million to $18 million. November 6th, the same day the council had the first reading of these ordinances, the mayor signed the contract with the attorneys. What is evident from these documents is that there has been no public discussion with the taxpayers or even the council, and lots of questions come to mind. Who prepared the engineering estimates? How much did they cost? When were they requested? What area do the studies concern? What group is the reason that another $2 million in bond debt was added? And my last question, a number of people would like to know if it's true that the reason for including the Morgan Sewer Project was because a medical marijuana cultivation facility is interested in locating there. Thank you. You laugh.
I do laugh because I'm not aware of that.
Well, excuse me? I think you should apologize.
When I get
Thank you, Ms. Harris-Ruder.
Thank you.
I will say one thing. This council is very aware of this. The engineers have been hired since 2008. They've been working on this project. They're being paid by an earmark that was granted by the federal government. The engineer estimates are coming from there. And so, you know, what engineer's been hired, that's been going on for almost 10 years now. So I just want to say that. Councilmember Mosley?
I would like you to address the attorneys and the underwriter, hiring them without some guidance from the council, some approval.
Well, I haven't hired the underwriter. I've signed a securities letter that we have to sign in order for them to provide us information. So there is no contract with the Stevens Incorporated. But before they can even discuss a project with me, I have to sign a letter, and I forget the name of the letter. It's a 450-something letter. G17 Underwriters Exclusion Letter. That has to be signed before they can tell me anything. The contract with Wright Lindsay Jennings, Mr. Spivey, if you want to address that.
I'd just like to say that my standard billing is if you don't issue the bonds, it doesn't pass, as in the past, you don't owe us anything. That's what we've always done, and that's the way it'll be. So if you choose not to go forward, I've enjoyed coming out here as I always do, but you don't owe me anything. Thank you.
So basically, I would understand it that no money has been committed to be spent by the city before these ordinances are passed and put into effect.
Before an election is approved by the voters.
Okay. So no.
And it's standard policy on all the bond issues we've done in the past.
All right. Is this? Is there anything that the city attorney has to add to any of this?
About
is the mayor within his administrative authority to do what he's done as far as you're concerned?
I haven't heard anything that jumps out at me as being outside of his authority. If you have something specifically that you're asking about.
Okay. If we had committed to pay money, would that have been the case?
So that would depend on what the money is and whether that money has been appropriated or not. I know the city council regularly appropriates monies yearly for different things such as legal services, professional services, and so presuming or assuming that number would fall under the amount that the council has previously appropriated for that purpose, there would be nothing wrong with that, that I could see.
Okay. That's all I've got.
Okay.
Thought we'd address it while we were here, I guess.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank
We'll move on with public comment. Mr. Christopher Parent, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, and guests. Welcome to Maumelle. I had a little meeting with about 20 neighbors over in Rolling Oaks. So I want to make sure this is the right forum for it under public safety with the new possible sales tax. So bear with me, Mayor.
Okay. All right. Okay.
If I'm not in the parameters, then just say, hey,
Okay.
Chris, wait for another day.
Okay, no, I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, are we talking about the election? Is it, I mean,
Yes, sir.
okay, then that's fine. Yes, sir. But if you would state your name and address for the record,
yes.
please. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Christopher Parent. I live at 101 Rolling Oaks. I'm in Ward 4. Lived here since 1986. What it is, on the news proposed sales tax, the local neighbors under the public safety issue want to know, is that going to include public safety like vacant houses and things like that? Because we have one house that has coons, rats, and squirrels in it, and we can't get anything done. And again, I said we lived in Ward 4, and we've had really no avail as far as representation. So
Now,
would the public safety kind of put an umbrella on this?
Well,
so
I think
when
you're
we
talking
have
about
a house.
I don't think it would address creatures inside a house. I mean, that's not public
Well, I
safety.
understand, but they've got rats coming from their house to the vacant house. It's kind of just a halfway house going to everybody else's house. So they're considering it a public safety issue.
Well,
If we don't want to get in this one, because I know there's a lot of moving parts to all this, we can bring this up for another day, Mayor.
Yeah, and if you want to come arrange a meeting with me, we'll talk about it and get the exact address, and we can get code enforcement looking into something like that.
I will also tell you that the 25 neighbors that we've discussed with, if they know more about what's going on with this taxation, I'm not saying that they're all going to vote for it. I'm not saying they're all going to go against it. But if there was more knowledge put out there so that they can understand it, because right now they kind of feel like it's being shotgunned.
Okay. All right.
So, thank you.
All right.
I appreciate it. And, you know, anytime, Mom L, there's going to be a betterment, sometimes taxes may not hurt. So, again, we live here, people. Thank you, Mayor,
All right.
gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Parent.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Parent,
Yes, sir.
that's one reason I brought up before we started all this. We're going to have public meetings on it.
Oh, yes, sir, and that's why
Okay.
I just kind of let the rest of that go, because all my questions were answered.
I just want to make sure you understand. You can convey that back to your group, and
Yes, sir, I will.
we're
And
going to
I do
meet with you.
appreciate it. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Councilmember Saunders. Mr. Ray Swankart?
Hi, I'm Ray Schwenkart, live in 132 Ridgeland Drive. Not really here to promote for or against the tax itself, but I do hope that y'all consider at least giving it to the people. That's all I ask. You're in a conundrum now that whether or not you do the special election or you push it off 2 months. And just by off a calculation, if you push it off by 2 months, you're going to lose $200,000. In the big scheme of things, is it really, because I feel that more people need to know and want the time, and if the more people that have a voice in it, because if everybody's made to do it quick, they might vote no or they might vote yes. But at least you get more people out of it. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Next comment card I have is from Miss Marion Scott.
Coney.
Thank you, sir. Marion Scott, 118 Osage Drive. And I'm just here tonight for Mom L Vision for the Future and to answer any questions anyone may have about the organization or anything about these ordinances that we can be of benefit for. But I did want to make a couple of comments about things that were said tonight. I do appreciate Councilman Mosley, you are just one of the most detail-oriented people I've known. You've done an excellent job of researching, looking for options, finding answers, verifying statements, and I do appreciate that because I know it's a lot of work. And a lot of what you found out has actually supported what we're trying to do. One of the things, for example, is that the state will not have funding for us in 2021, as I mentioned last time. I had heard that, and but I couldn't state that factually because I didn't have it in writing. Well, Alderman Mosley has gotten it in writing, so we're down the road quite a ways before the state will even consider us, if they consider us then. So if we want that third exit, if we want to mitigate traffic on the boulevard, we need to do this ourselves. That's all there is to it. Also, what the council is looking at is not approving or disapproving a tax. The council is approving or disapproving this going to the public. And I know there's a lot of misunderstanding about that. People think that what you're voting on is, oh my gosh, the council's voting on whether or not we're going to have a tax. You're not. You're just voting on whether or not we're going to proceed with bringing this before the public. And I've seen a lot of trees tonight, and it's really easy to get lost in the trees and forget about the forest. The forest is, we need that third entrance. The only way we're going to get it is with a tax for us. We need to take care of Maumelle citizens that have been underserved by doing that sewer project across the highway. Just because they're across the highway doesn't mean they're not family. They are, and we owe it to them to give them an infrastructure that is as good as the infrastructure that's in our city. And the public safety, again, there was an ordinance brought forward. It hasn't been read yet tonight, but it will eliminate the community service fee contingent upon the passage of the tax if the council feels that that's the right thing to do. Because I know that there is a lot of concern that, yeah, we're going to go ahead and we're going to present this tax, and there's no guarantee that that community service fee is going to go away. So that ordinance will help move that in that direction and build some trust in the eyes of the citizens. So that's really all I had to say about tonight. Don't forget the forest, but if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay. Councilmember Mosley, do you have a?
Yeah, I was just going to make a comment there. You were thanking me about details and that sort of thing. The, that one email that's in the packet the mayor put in there, the truth is the truth, and I'll pass that along whenever you have the truth.
And I appreciate that, because you didn't have to do that. You could have kept that to yourself, but you did the right thing. I'm proud of you.
Have you ever been a school marm in your life?
Good boy. No. No, but it was the right thing to do. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scott.
All right.
I think that's it. The last card I have is from Mr. Jimmy Wallace.
Thank you, sir. I'm Jim Wallace, and I do not live here in Maumelle. I live in White County, 624 Highway 367 North, Judsonia, but I'm have ownership in properties here on Count Massey and on Country Club Circle. And basically, I'm a broker owner of Wallace Valuable Property. And I'm speaking on behalf of some of the ownership that I have that has listed properties with me on Count Massey and Country Club Circle, and on behalf of my partners also. There's been a lot of things brought up that, I coached high school basketball for 26 years. And I guess I could have come up here and tried to be really elaborate and all that good stuff, but I'm going to just talk to you kind of like I talk to my basketball team. Not about the playing of the game and the competition of the game, but about what you do in life in general, and how you treat other people, and how you should be good citizens, because that's what it was all about. We wanted them to be the best they could be in athletics, in basketball or baseball or whatever. But the main reason I was there, I felt like, was to have good citizens, to help promote good citizens, and to be involved in their community. So one of the things that politics, I think, in this form, there's not a place for it. And when I say that, you look back at the last 10 years of what's gone on in our capital, and, everybody forms sides, and they jump on one side or they jump on the other side, and they don't even hear what the real item is that they're talking about, or what the bill is that they're presenting, because the bill hadn't even been presented, and they're already against it. Matter of fact, they're already advertising against it. So, politics, when you have an opportunity for the citizens of Maumelle to vote on an issue, a specific issue, and it's up to them, then it looks to me like they ought to have that opportunity.
to vote on that issue. And that's not, I'm not trying to point at anyone or anything. We have to have a form of government. We know that. But the citizens here in Maumelle can either approve this or disapprove it. And that's all you're trying to do, decide on getting it to them and when to get it to them. They just said 2021, no money. The highway department really should be ashamed of itself. They've known about this issue for 15 years. But they're up there at Austin, Arkansas, building an interchange that costs $15 million. But the citizens here in Maumelle, they need it, I would think, a whole lot worse. I mean, I go through that area every day up there, and there's not near the population up there, and they've got an interchange. One of the biggest investments that any of us makes are in a home. Well, the citizens here in Maumelle, what the realtors say across the river is that, hey, you can get a lot more bang for your buck over here in Maumelle. But who wants to fight that traffic? So your housing and the homes that you've bought here are 20 to 35% undervalued. $90 to $100 on a nice resale home per square foot. Here, across the river, it's 130, 135. You know, so your investment that you've made and paid for is not really gaining in value, just simply because Maumelle Boulevard. And if you don't have to sit on Maumelle Boulevard, that means you're not traveling it when you're going to work early in the morning or coming in late in the afternoon, like probably, 50% of the people do here. So those are some of the things that I wanted to bring out. The sales tax increase instead of a millage increase, it looks to me like I've heard it said that 77% of the sales tax on goods and services and gasoline comes from outside the community. 75%. That means someone else is paying for it. You put it on a millage, and then you would have the homeowners paying for it. So why not let other people pay for it that come in here and make money and then leave? Let them help pay for it. So government is the reason that we're having an opportunity to have a special election. 15 years trying to get this done. Y'all know more about it than I do. And why would you elect a mayor? Why would you elect a mayor that didn't want to improve the city, didn't want to help the city, didn't want to go out and see what he could do, didn't want to promote good things for the city? You know, the guy's got a job to do. He's doing the best he can as far as I'm seeing. I had a friend. He was my dad's friend. He was also my boss for a period of time. And he said, when we'd come, it was pipeline construction, I worked for him. He was general superintendent and superintendent, assistant superintendent, and he was over the tie-ins on a pipeline construction job. A lot of times we'd quit at 5 o'clock. However, quitting time was really 5:30. But some of the guys in the other crews wanted to start quitting around 4:30, 4:45. And he always said to our crew, he said, we've got 15 more minutes. We're not going to put off what we can do today until tomorrow. If we can do it today, we're going to go ahead and do it. So the longer you wait, you're 5 or 6 years down the road. If you wait on the highway department, maybe 7 or 8, maybe 10, who knows? So the people of Maumelle probably I know the people that sit on that boulevard out there, the people that come in the afternoon want to get home. I think they'd probably be for it, and y'all all know that. Anyway, that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. That's all the comment cards I have. Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, I'm going to make some motions here. First motion I'd like to make,
Is it on 944?
944.
Okay.
May include all
All right.
the others, too.
Okay.
I'm going to make a motion that we change this ordinance and the others to make it not a special election. In other words, make it on the same date as the primary election in May. All these speakers, constituents, and myself believe elections, when it involves taxes, should be with a general election or election where you have a good turnout. And so I'm going to move that we change the ordinances to where it's on that day in May. I'm making that motion.
Okay. And let me clarify, there's not a date listed in ordinance 944, so it does, and I just looked at it real quick, I don't see where it says special election anywhere in there, but
Well,
that's fine, but, okay,
That's
all
the
right.
intent.
Okay, all right, so your motion is to change the ordinance number 944, if it's in there, 945 and 946, that it be done at the primary election in May.
That's correct.
Do I hear a second? Motion fails for lack of a second.
Okay, I have another motion to make.
Okay,
The ordinance called as public safety tax is being referred to as a public safety tax. That's 0.5. And I'd like to make a motion, we change that to 0.375 instead of 0.5. It's over collecting. I want it to be closer to what we would be swapping out the community service fee. Community service fee raises $750,000. I think 1 cent from, or a half a cent sales tax would raise like $1,250,000. So that's about $500,000 over. So I'd like to get it down closer to that. If you do the 0.375, it would raise $937,000. Still about the same amount, or still more than the $750 of the community service fee. But without doing that, I think we'll be accused of raising taxes. I'd rather just see it swap out the community service fee. So I'll make that motion on this ordinance and the other ones.
okay. The motion by Councilmember Mosley is to amend the public safety tax amount from 0.5% to 0.375%.
That'd be 944 and 945, I believe.
Right, on 944 and 945, because 946 deals with the bond tax only.
Correct.
Okay. Do I hear a second? If not, motion fails for lack of a second.
Okay, I have one more motion I'd like to make.
Okay,
I'd like to table all these ordinances until we've held a public forum to inform the voters of what this is so they can better provide input for our decisions. I'd like to make a motion that we table all these ordinances until there's a public hearing made.
okay, we have a motion to table all ordinances 944, 945, and 946 until a public hearing or public forum. I would use two different words.
Hearing, I guess.
Hearing, okay, public hearing is held. Do I hear a second? Motion fails for lack of a second.
Let me just confirm too the amounts of the. Currently, we have $15 million in bond debt outstanding, and this will add, if all these pass, this would add $18 million. That would be $33 million in bond debt That sound about right?
Well, there's additional bond debt also. There is a 2012 bond issue also that was used, I think, to construct the fire and police station. So I'll have to, it was refinanced in 2012. It was done before that, but it was refinanced in 2012. I don't know the exact amount of that, but I need to get that also.
Okay, but I was under the impression the 15 million included that, what we-
Well, it includes the fire station number 2, but it doesn't include the main fire stations. Those are financed
there's
with
still
franchise fees.
Okay, so we've got bond debt.
We've got one other bond issue that's out there.
Okay, yeah, it'd be nice to know.
Okay.
Just what our total city debt's gonna be.
Okay, all right.
I have no idea what is normal and customary for a city of our size to have in bond debt, but it would be, I don't know if anybody can tell us, but it would be nice to know.
All right.
Oh, and I was gonna ask you, is there any chance you can raise an additional funds, you think, from Metro Plan, the county, North Little Rock, or anything else to go toward that interchange at this point?
There's been some discussion with Metro Plan, but there might be $1 million available, but it would not be available this year or next year, as I understand it in talking to Mr. Casey Covington. I approached Pulaski County a while back, and they claimed they committed $1 million to the project out there, and they spent that on the design of the Counts Massey Extension roadway is what they're claiming at this point in time.
Okay. Anything you can do in that regard, just to help would be nice.
I understand. It just help it pay, the bonds pay off early, but I don't know of any organization, government entity, however you want to look at it, that would be able to fund the roughly $12 million for construction plus the contingency that we calculated in there for the interchange.
Okay.
And I don't know of any that are willing to do the Morgan Sewer project at all. If you remember earlier this year, we tried to go for a grant project to help in that area to fund that project, and it was turned down.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. There's no other questions on ordinance number 944. We'll move on to ordinance number 945. Madam City Clerk, if you'd read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 945, an ordinance calling a special election in the City of Maumelle, Arkansas, on the question of levying a citywide 0.5% sales and use tax for the purpose of operating and maintaining the city's public safety facilities and operations, securing repayment of bonds issued to finance capital improvements, and prescribing other matters pertaining thereto.
Okay, thank you, Madam City Clerk. Are there any comments or questions on ordinance number 945? Okay, if not, we'll move on to the second reading of ordinance number 946, providing for a special election. Madam City Clerk, could you read that by title only?
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 946, an ordinance calling for a special election in the City of Maumelle, Arkansas, on the question of issuing bonds under Amendment Number 62 to the Constitution of the State of Arkansas for the purpose of financing the cost of capital improvements, levying a 0.5% sales and use tax for the purpose of retiring such bonds, and prescribing other matters pertaining thereto.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or comments on ordinance number 946? Okay, if not, we'll move on to the next item, which is under new business. Mr. Spivey and Ms. Burnett, thank you very much for being here tonight and answering the questions, and we would request your presence at the next meeting, I'm sorry to say. Okay, thank you very much. Next item under new business is the first reading of ordinance number 947, community service fee. And first, let me apologize to Councilmember Mosley. There was some confusion on who was going to sponsor this ordinance, and So his name got put on the first agenda that was sent out to the public, and it listed Councilmember Mosley as the sponsor of that ordinance, and he did not wish to be the sponsor of that, and so we apologize that that went out, and so I am the sponsor of that ordinance.
Fine, thank you.
Madam City Clerk, if you do the first reading of ordinance number 947, community service fee.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 947, an ordinance repealing the community service fee upon the satisfaction of specific contingencies.
As Ms. Scott mentioned earlier, this is an ordinance that would repeal the community service fee upon the satisfaction of a lot of contingencies, but it's basically that the council here approves an election, and then that the city council, or that that the voters then approve the question for the collection of the public safety tax, and then there are no legal challenges to the results of the March 13th special election called by Ordinance 945, and then in accordance with the laws of the state of Arkansas, that the public safety tax is actually collected. And the only reason those contingencies are in there is because we don't know what's going to happen. And so until those sales tax start coming in, we didn't want this ordinance to be in effect, because basically, as it was mentioned earlier tonight, that's $700,000 to $750,000 that wouldn't be coming in the budget, or wouldn't be coming in the coffers of the city, and then couldn't be used for providing public safety and other services that the city currently provides. So, there are the questions, or any questions or comments on ordinance number 947? Okay, if not, this is on first reading and would be on second reading at the next meeting, if there's no other comments. Okay, moving on to the next item. We have resolution number 2017-28, approving names and amounts for non-payment of fees. Madam City Clerk, if you'd read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, a resolution to be entitled Resolution Number 2017-28, a resolution approving names and amounts of certain delinquent accounts to be certified to the Pulaski County Clerk, Assessor, and Tax Collector for collection with personal property taxes as a result of non-payment of fees for collection and disposal of solid waste in the City of Maumelle and for other purposes.
Motion to approve resolution 2017-28.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 2017-28. Is there any discussion on that motion? I will say this is something that we've done this will be the third year that we've done this. And basically it's only turning over delinquent accounts for their solid waste collection. And so basically it's that $15.50 per month plus fees. And as you can see, some people run up some very substantial bills on some of these, and sometimes it's because we haven't been able to find a personal property tax bill under that name, and so you may see one that's on here from last year because we couldn't find a personal property tax to attach it to, because that's what it relates to. There's no other questions or comments on resolution number 2017-28. All those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Motion passes. Next item is resolution number 2017-29, allowing AARP to use an unused portion of City Hall. And let me say something here. I'd meant for an email to be put in the packet that went out to the council members, but it was not put in there, and so therefore I've laid them at your desk. It just gives you a little bit of background information on the discussion that I've had with AARP. And Miss Lydia Plant is here tonight also, and she'd be happy to answer any questions. But first, let's have the reading of Resolution 2017-29.
Oh, sorry.
any more.
Okay, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, a resolution to be entitled Resolution Number 2017-29, a resolution authorizing the AARP to use a currently unused portion of City Hall to offer to the citizens of Maumelle free tax preparation services.
Ms. Plant, would you like to come up and you might be able to explain the process better than I can explain it, so.
Hello.
State your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Lydia Plant. I live in 14400 Misty Lane, West Little Rock. I'm standing in for Mr. John McCullen, who is your citizen of Maumelle, who will be heading up this site to prepare income tax for people for free during this tax season. AARP Foundation is the funding of this tax aid service. It's also funded by the IRS. This is our 50th year of service. We provide income tax to all citizens of all ages. Of course, we emphasize the elderly, but I can't sit down with you and ask you how old you are before I do it, so we do it for everybody. And I'll do it for everybody in this room. It'll be an honor.
Where do we sign up?
And basically, so we've not ever done this before, but we've got one area of City Hall, which was the former legislative office of Mr. Mark Lowry that's in the front part of the building. I'm not sure if it would be large enough for them, but that would be one possibility. The other might be downstairs where the Senior Wellness Center was. So, this is not a decision that I wanted to make on my own, so that's why I brought it to the council. Councilmember Saunders?
Thank you, Mayor. As I understand it, this service that you're providing is going to run from approximately mid-January till April the 15th.
Correct.
Okay. How does that impact the improvements we're looking at for City Hall?
Well, it could. I don't think it will impact it only because we haven't started the design yet. And so I think it would take at least 4 months for design to go through. And so we need to do a selection of the architecture firm and then go through the design process. So I had some concerns about that, but the more I thought about it, I don't think we'd be under construction by that point in time. But we're going to have to move people anyway, and we're going to have to do some shuffling around. They might get shuffled too if it happens to be in the process. So.
Well, okay, a second question, probably for you, Mayor, is I noticed from the correspondence that you've had here, are we able to provide tables and chairs? They're providing laptops, printers, and paper.
Well, I don't know how many tables and chairs they're going to need, so.
Well, at this point, I have 4 volunteers that will each need a table that would be suitable for 3 people in case it's a joint taxpayer. And we would require a table no bigger than that, even smaller to that extent. So 4 tables and 12 chairs.
Okay. And what about security? The room that we're talking about, I'm not that familiar with it. Does it give access through the back end to the rest of City Hall?
Does not.
It does not. It's exterior.
It has an exterior door, if it's the legislative office that I was referring to.
Okay.
There is access, but you'd have to go through a locked door to get to a portion, and that door would remain locked.
And we would be providing utilities, electricity, heat and air, well, heat probably.
Yes.
And what else can you envision?
Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi, internet connection, we do need that.
Again, security, is that an issue if we give them password to our Wi-Fi here in the building?
We could, well, I'll let Ms. Timmons answer that then.
Councilmember Saunders, I changed the Wi-Fi security password periodically. I like to do it every 3 to 6 months, so I would be changing it when they leave. That's about the time I would have changed it anyway, if you guys approve.
Well, I'm just concerned, and it's nothing against your people. I'm sure they're honest, but, you know, I'd hate for someone to come in there and get into our city records or things like that.
They can't do that through our Wi-Fi, no. Our Wi-Fi is not tied into our server. Yeah.
Nor can you get through to my tax records either.
Well, the way you're talking, I may turn mine over to you. I like what you're doing, and I'm just going to state this, and I'll hush. But I think this is a good thing that you're doing for the citizens of Maumelle. I don't have a problem that it's going to cost us a few pennies more for the utilities and the heat. I don't mind that, because we're benefiting our citizens. So I thank you for doing that, assuming we'll make this happen.
And I decided to open a site in Maumelle is because I have sites in Little Rock, and many of your citizens come to my place. And for many years, we've been asked to do this, but I did not have enough people, volunteers. Most important, we have to have certified volunteers to pass that test with iOS to be able to do the text. So now this year we got 4, so I was very excited. And we had done this about 10 years ago, I believe at the community center, one of those, or the library, I can't remember. But so we're excited.
Well, I work a lot with the senior citizens program here, and we have a lot of senior citizens that are on very limited budgets, and I'm sure that they will appreciate this. So
That's what we're here for.
Thank you, Councilmember Saunders. Councilmember Mosley?
I know why you brought this to us, because we got a lot of flack last time we rented that one office out for zero money.
That's correct.
And
And actually, we wound up, we got rent payments, so. Yeah.
we did what?
We did get rent
That's
payments.
right, we did get rent. So, and I'm kind of on the record as an alderman saying that we should not provide city services or resources for nothing. And I have no problem with what you're doing. I think that's a very honorable, nice thing to do. But I do believe there should be some kind of a nominal charge. For example, back with Lake Willistine, there is a nominal charge now for the golf course to use water out there and that sort of thing. It's not a huge amount of money, but it's nominal. And I think the city should do that. So I will be a no vote unless we want to change that to where we do some type of a nominal charge.
Are you making a motion?
Oh God! Well, I don't know what a nominal charge is. Can I make a motion say a nominal charge?
Unfortunately, the program is provided free for everybody. We are not allowed by AARP and IRS to charge anything, or pay for anything. So
I won't make a motion then, but I will be voting no, and that's why.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Mosley. Councilmember Timmons?
I think this is a great program. I think this is a benefit to our citizens. The nominal fee that we're getting it's not costing our citizens a dime to come to them. If you need tables and chairs, I'd be willing to help with that. I think this is just a great program.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Timmons, and thank you for the offer of the tables and chairs. Councilmember Williams?
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And I know there are a lot of people who will use your services and be very appreciative as well.
Yes.
And I'm with Timmons. If you need any tables or chairs or anything like that, I've got those too.
Thank you.
Motion to approve resolution number 2017-29.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve resolution 2017-29. Is there any discussion on that motion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no.
No.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Plant. Just, we'll need to get together by email, and maybe you need to come out and look at the
Yes.
location and everything.
Yes,
So-
I would like that.
Okay.
Maybe we should do it right after the holiday.
Okay, that sounds great.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
All right, thank you.
And we'll be ready to do all your tax now.
All right, moving on to mayor's comments. Don't forget, we have Hometown Thanksgiving on November the 23rd. You have a copy of the flyer in your agendas. It's from 11 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. And I'm sure that they will still take volunteers. No? Oh, you're good? All right. Never turn away volunteers. And then if you want to provide cakes or pies for the cakewalk, they would appreciate those. And they can just drop those off at the Center on the Lake, I would assume, starting Tuesday, Wednesday? Wednesday, okay. On Wednesday afternoon, if y'all would drop them off, if you're able to do that. Veterans Day recap, I just want to say one thing. Councilmember Saunders takes on a task every year in November to do our Veterans Day, and he did a great job again this year. And Colonel Dixon from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers was the keynote speaker, did a great job. He also had the Maumelle Charter School represented with singers and speeches and things like that. So the youth from the Maumelle Charter were there. And then his father-in-law, who is a World War II veteran, did the wreath, and placed the wreath, and we appreciate that very much. But we appreciate your hard work, and thank you very much, Councilmember Saunders, for that.
Certainly welcome.
And we had a little over 100 people out there, but a good event, and and some things were said about we need more people coming out, especially our young people coming out. So we're going to keep working on that to try to get more of the youth out there too, to just remember our veterans and the service that they provide. I had a couple other items real quick. The fire at Lake Willisteen, I had it on my list to tell y'all about it. Basically, it burned about 1/4 of an acre of ground is what it burned, but it was stopped by a non-paved pathway, basically where people walk, actually stopped it in one spot, and the pathway would have stopped it if it had continued toward the homes. I think. I mean, the winds weren't that strong this morning. Now, Miss Bullington may be right. If it had happened Saturday, it could have been a lot worse event or something like that, but we don't know that. We also don't know the cause of it. I mean, it could have been anything that caused it. It could have been a fire. It could have been a campfire, or it could have been someone threw down a cigarette and it laid there and smoldered and in the dry leaves and pine needles. But Parks and Rec was out there today. Chief Ezel and the fire department was out there. They made several trips out there to deal with the smoldering. Three trips out there to deal with the smoldering areas. So it was not taken lightly by anybody within the city government. And I know one person may have got an early warning notice about it also. Chief Williams was notified after the fire department. The fire department was actually called about 3, but I think Chief Williams got notification from a citizen about 6 a.m. by knocking on his door to let him know about it. So I'm sure he appreciated that very much. But we are looking at it, and we even discussed maybe doing a control burn in that area. Before we do that, we're going to let the council know and talk to the Friends of Lake Willisteen and all that. Some people want us to clear that vegetation and underbrush out of there. Some people don't. So that's the problem. That's the conundrum we have, is that it's a matter of if we take it all out, then people feel like they don't have their privacy protected at some points, and then also that provides a habitat for wildlife too. So that's the deal. But we may still, because all the leaves and pine straw under there, we may need to do a control burn. But that's not going to be done anytime soon. We'll talk about that before we brighten that up and discuss it. Do you have a question on that, Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment a little bit. My wife and I walk there almost every night, and this time of year it's after dark, and sometimes we're out there as late as 9 o'clock. And I've never noticed any misbehavior or anything out on the path system that goes around the Lake Williston. So that was kind of surprising to me. Unless something kicks up later on in the night, I've never really seen anything weird going on out there in that one area. And but there's a lot of young people that accumulate out there, and there's no problem with that as far as I'm concerned. They don't make cat calls. They stick to their own their business. So, but anyway, if there's something going on, I guess, you know, I haven't come across it. So,
Well, and I can speak from riding with the police and just talking to the police. They make steady patrols through that area. Now, I'm not going to say they can see everything that's going on up in the woods, but they're looking at cars and checking people out. And I know Chief Williams drives through there on a regular basis because sometimes I run into him when I'm driving through there. So we do keep an eye on that area because we do think it's a jewel in Maumelle. And we want people to use it. We want the teens to use it. We want them to feel comfortable staying there. We'd rather have them there than on some private property somewhere else or something like that. Now, there are hours that it's closed. So after 10 o'clock, they need to go home, you know. But and, you know, I will say Miss Bullington brought up the rails, as she called them. That's only to keep vehicles out of there. There's no way that would keep anybody out that was walking through that park, and so or to that park. And that's to keep vehicles out of the park during snow and ice. That's why those rails are put there. And if the officers had to go through a gate to go back there to chase somebody down, they're gonna see them coming and know they're coming long before they get there and have a chance to get away. So that's the only other thing on that. And then, but I think our police do a great job, and the fire department did a great job putting out the fire and then addressing citizens' concerns today with the fire that did occur. And yes, we may have been lucky with the wind conditions, not as bad, but I still think the pathway would have been a good fire break for that fire. The only other thing I have, as it was given to me today, is there's an adoptive vet that's going on for the holidays. Jackie Bruning does this every year out here. But Adopted Vet will be partnering with some of the veterans groups in Little Rock Downtown Storage Center to collect coats, shoes, boots, underwear, backpacks, sleeping bags, warm socks, toiletries, warm clothing, and blankets. Individuals can also choose to sponsor a veteran for $40 donation or simply write a thank you note for their service. The collection points announced to date in Maumelle are Maumelle City Hall, the Maumelle Center on the Lake, Bank of the Ozarks, Maumelle Branch, Maumelle Chamber of Commerce, First United Methodist Church in Maumelle, and Tutus and Tennis Shoes in Maumelle. So if you can, please adopt a vet and reach out and help somebody during this holiday. And we'll get a copy of this in the next council packet so that'll be out to the public. But it was given to me today, and I wanted to include it. Next item is Planning Commission report, and that would be done after the Planning Commission, which they're not meeting the month of November. Their meeting would actually have been last Thursday, but they did not meet because they had no items on the agenda. Next item is council member comments. Councilmember Saunders.
Mayor, are you prepared? I'm just curious about our status on the adaptive control system for the boulevard.
The contract has been signed and the product is being configured currently as we speak. I think they've got 180 days to deploy that. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Had an email about it today, and we're trying to figure out some configurations between the engineers that have designed the project and the engineers who supply the product. Councilmember Mosley.
Yeah, I feel like we need to kind of hold each other accountable for decorum at the council, and we even have a resolution we pass every year encouraging decorum and being polite to one another and our speakers and that sort of thing. And we encourage the speakers to have good decorum. And I do have a little problem with I don't know what Ms. Ritter said, but you said something about that's a crock. And
I did. I stand by it.
Pardon me?
And I stand by it.
I don't know what she said, but I don't know that I've heard anything that deserved a jeer from the city council. So
I didn't say anything to her. I was addressing the misinformative comments that continuously come.
But they have a right, they have a right
They
to,
have a right to misinform, and we have a right to call out on the misinformation, just as the mayor has the right to do so as well.
well, I think it should have been done in a little better manner. So I would appreciate if you would think about that. You may owe her an apology. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Mosley. The other council members' comments? Mr. City Attorney?
There was a question posed by Councilmember Mosley at the last meeting regarding whether Councilmember Williams needed to abstain from the public safety tax vote due to Chief Sam Williams having a very minor role in the police department. I included something from the Municipal League in that issue. I figured it'd just be easier to address now. An Attorney General opinion specifically addressed whether a council member whose spouse was employed by the fire department in this hypothetical had to resign. And they say not necessarily, and they point to an Attorney General's opinion, which I pulled, and there's a couple quick things I just wanted to point out so that it can help us all get a better idea of what conflict of interest is. But just a few quotes is, conflict of interest is a clash between the public interest and a private pecuniary interest of the individual concerned. And it goes on and says it's when that individual furthers their own personal gain. It's the influence that he or she exerts in his official position to gain personally in spite of his official trust, which is the evil that the law seeks to eradicate. That is that public conflict of interest. And I found this interesting. It says that it's talking about counties in this case, but a member of the quorum court can lawfully participate in matters relating to a office held by a relative, including general budgetary matters. But as always, these are case-by-case investigations into the matter, and particularly what you're trying to avoid is where that member is refraining from participating in decisions that are focused more narrowly upon the personal economic interest of the family member. And so it goes on. Council member Williams could discuss even budgetary issues, but if, say, for example, the city council was determining whether or not to give Chief Williams a raise, that would just clearly be inappropriate for Mrs. Williams to discuss. So I'm unaware of anything in the public safety tax that would create that conflict of interest to that nature, and so I don't see any reason why she would need to abstain from the vote. Thank you. That was all I had. I mostly just felt like talking. Been almost 2 hours, so. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Madam City Clerk,
No, sir.
if there's no other items or agenda to come before the city council, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
To adjourn.
Second.
Have motion and second to adjourn. Is there a discussion on that motion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Meeting is adjourned.